Hey, welcome. Thanks for checking out the video. I know this game gets a lot of high praise from fans, and I just want you to understand that I'm not trying to rustle any jimmies here. I'm just trying to give my honest opinions on a video game, and it turns out some of them might not be what you're expecting to hear. Well, let's get started. Which version should I go with? I could be a purist and play a fan-translated ROM of the Super Famicom original, but I think the first remake of DQ3 spoiled me with its amazing graphics. This ain't gonna cut it for me. How about the PS2 remake? This isn't half bad. Nice graphics, fully animated 3D monsters, and it does the DQ8 thing of having a symphonic suite instead of chiptunes. It's much nicer on the ears. Unfortunately, playing on a PS2 emulator means dealing with hefty input lag and not being able to fast forward, which, knowing what I know now about this game, would be a serious problem for me. Oh, but that's not even the worst issue. Check this out, you're gonna love this. Akira Toriyama actually submitted the cover art with the wrong colored slime, because apparently, he forgot their base color. Man, this guy is on some goofballs. Never underestimate the scatterbrained nature of a manga artist. You know what? Let's play the Netflix version. No, you idiot. You focus on one at a time. Who taught you to fight metal slimes? When I first watched Dragon Quest Your Story last year, I was a little bit on the fence about it, especially when one of the opening scenes goes just way too hard, and I don't mean that in a good way. And then I watched it again for this video, and I'm not gonna hold back here. I think it's one of the best video game movies. Some parts are so bright and vibrant that they make you want to live in this world. And when Luca proposes to Bianca, oh god, I'm gonna lose it, you guys. Yeah, the story deviates pretty heavily from the events of the game, but if anything, I think that just makes it more interesting to watch. The English dub isn't half bad either, with Yuri Lowenthal voicing Luca because of course he did. And I just gotta mention Bishop Lodja. He went from being a fairly boring antagonist speaking in broken English to this absolute unit of delightful evil. He's got the crazy eyes, creepy smile, and a chin that, hey, can we get a... yeah, thanks. I would buy this in a heartbeat if the Blu-ray had the English dub or at least subtitles, but it seems to only be meant for Japanese viewers. That's a shame, but thankfully it's still on Netflix, so please, check it out sometime. As far as playing 5 goes, I think I'll just stick with the DS version like last time. How much does a copy go for these days? What the fuck? Okay, brushing that one off. The stories of Dragon Quest games up to this point have mostly been pretty standard. 1 and 2 were very generic, 3 had a really cool plot twist around the end, and 4 got creative by having you play through short stories for your party members at the start, but still wound up being the same old shtick afterward. 5 isn't like that. Yuji Horii must have said something like, guys, I think people are getting a little tired of defeating the bad guy to save the world. So what if we still did that, but showed the hero's life leading up to that moment? And we make him wear a purple turban. Well, that part was likely a Toriyama decision. Thus, 5 opens with the birth of the main protagonist and the introduction of the coolest dad ever, Pankraz, the level 27 warrior with a level 50 mustache. This dude exterminates low-level monsters with ease, heals his son after every fight even if he doesn't need it, refers to town guards as my man, and is generally loved by all. What a guy. One of the best dads in video games. And that's what makes it so much harder to witness his demise. It's a really strong and well thought out scene. The main baddie Lodja sends 2 of his lackeys to fight Pankraz, and naturally he wipes the floor with them because Pankraz don't play that shit. But then Lodja puts a scythe to his son's throat and basically says, alright, let's try that again. You're then forced to watch as he's slowly beaten to death by 2 jabronis who we already know he could defeat with ease, adding a shameful insult to injury. Okay, good, he's still standing. Maybe he'll be okay after... Oh, I don't think resurrection is gonna be an option here. And it just gets harsher. Lodja enslaves you and the prince that Pankraz came to rescue, and suddenly it's 10 years later. It's such an out of left field shift in tone because the few hours leading up to this moment are really nice and pleasant. You go to a spooky castle with your friend Bianca, and afterward you go to Fairyland to help bring back spring. It's really great stuff. That happens a lot in this game. Really positive ups balanced out by devastating lows. As Hand of the Heavenly Bride, the subtitle of the DS version suggests, you get to choose who you want to marry. There's Bianca, childhood friend and most likely choice for most players considering how she's the only girl you're given some kind of rapport with. There's Nira, one of the daughters of the rich Rodrigo Briscoletti, and Deborah, or Deborah, however you pronounce it, the third option added in the DS version. She's something. I step on men like you all the time. I don't think she means that the way other people hope she means that. Could you imagine actually picking somebody other than Bianca? I mean, come on. You just know she has that country girl strength. And just look at Nira, she probably couldn't even bench press her own weight. But having the other options does make for some good replay value, especially since Party Chat, a feature which was left out of the DS remake of DQ4, is present here. With the press of a button, you can find out whatever your human party members have on their minds, often with context to whatever the NPC you just spoke to said. Yeah, your kids don't have the most interesting things to say most of the time, but it's impressive just how much dialogue there is for such a minor feature. It probably took dozens and dozens of hours to translate, and I appreciate the folks at Art Piazza for putting in the work. It takes a while before the goal becomes defeating the big bad guy Nimzo, but up to that point, so much crazy stuff happens. You become a slave, escape, get married, go on a honeymoon, you get crowned king, and not just until you get tired and give it up like in DQ3. No, you literally inherit the kingdom that your father used to rule. Yeah, surprise, the opening scene wasn't just a dream. Then your wife gives birth, which according to this game, the incubation period of legendary heroes is about, 5 hours? Then your wife gets kidnapped, you both get turned to stone and separated. 8 years or so pass, your kids and Sancho, your family servant, track you down and restore you. It's crazy. You know what else is crazy? The monster designs and how much better they look than in DQ4. Maybe it's all in my head, but they look like they had a lot more animation work done in this release. Bona constrictors and willow whips? Haha, very punny. This dude ain't called Funky Ferret because he's a music lover. Bunnycorn, huh? Yeah, I guess horny hair would have raised a lot of eyebrows. Bad Apple, Toho reference. Hippoblockamus. Hippoblockamus. I think Toriyama was getting a little tired when he designed this guy. I mean, look at him. It's just an old dude. And Necromancer? That's a little generic for DQ, isn't it? Don't even get me started on metal slimes. They're still just as much of a pain as ever to take down, but now it's even worse since they can be recruited. Oh really, you don't say. Do you like Pokemon? Then you have DQ5 to thank for inspiring it. Certain monsters can get back up after being defeated and asked to join your merry band. I started out with a brownie named Wacka, who couldn't use magic but hit like a truck, and later I got Gootrude the slime, who's an important character in the movie, and a Slime Knight with helpful healing spells. I also found this baby dragon with awesome breath attacks that cost no MP and hit the entire enemy line. Unfortunately, most monsters have a level cap which can limit their effectiveness later in the game, so I recruited Mason the Golem as my heavy hitter in the endgame. This guy's awesome. He has way more HP than any of my human party members, and I always really liked the design. Also, he totally walks like a Belmont. Here's the problem with the recruitment system and why Pokemon handled it a million times better. The only thing you can do to get a monster you want is to fight it over and over and over. Allow me to show you exactly how tedious this can be. I was having some trouble defeating Lodja, so I decided to update my party with a tougher monster. I did some searching online and decided on a King Cure Slime. Having a dedicated healer sounded like a pretty good bet since I could keep him in the wagon for backup heals if needed. I flew to where they spawned and started my hunt. What would transpire in this place would be a grinding session for the ages. And I have 20 gigs of recorded footage to prove it. I grinded for an hour and a half. An hour and a half of walking in circles and mashing A through battles. And if I was playing on original hardware and not speeding up my gameplay with RetroArch, it would have taken 3 hours and I would have been begging for the sweet release of death. In the modern era of gaming, this is absolutely 100% unacceptable! This is the kind of tedium you'd expect from shiny hunting in Pokemon. You know, that thing that weird people do? But you know the really funny thing about this is? I never even got the King Cure Slime I wanted. I can be stubborn as hell when it comes to grinding, my years spent in WoW are a testament to that, but even my brain eventually decided that this was bullshit and called it quits. Silver lining, at least I got leveled up enough to beat Lodja. And speaking of bosses, there aren't really enough of them. I consider that a sin in these kinds of RPGs. A boss fight is supposed to be a chance for the player to start paying attention and put all their tools to use, instead of just mashing attack through easy fights. When I faced Ladja for our first proper fight, I was woefully unprepared because I hadn't been challenged at all for hours leading up to him. It's like playing a shmup with difficulty that isn't balanced properly. You're flying along all lackadaisical, getting more and more complacent and lazy because the game isn't keeping you engaged with any sort of difficulty, and suddenly BAM! Balls to the wall boss fight that kicks your teeth in and pile drives you. This is what we in the industry call a difficulty spike, and it's generally not something you want in your game. It feels kind of wrong to use the term difficulty in this context, since the game isn't hard, you just need to be a high enough level to win. You want to know how to beat every boss fight in the late game? It's not complicated. You cast oomph on your physical attackers to double their attack, kabuff to boost defense, insulate if you need it to protect against fire and ice, kasap to lower the boss's defense, and sometimes even that doesn't work, so great, less steps. And either multi-heal or the Sage's Stone to stay topped off on HP. That's about it. Every boss can be defeated like this, and trying to deviate from the strategy is only going to waste your time and show just how limited your options really are. Fans like to say that Dragon Quest is traditional, and that's why the core battle mechanics of each game barely change. Some magic spells will get added every game, but be honest, have you ever used Hocus Pocus for more than just a laugh in some random overworld battle? Perhaps the problem is that I'm playing these games with relatively short breaks in between. Hell, I played through the first 4 games just last year, and that's probably not the best way to enjoy them. They should have multiple years of waiting time between releases, eagerly awaiting the next entry, not quickly banging through them for a series of videos. There's another aspect that I've heard called traditional, but for me, in this game, it's unacceptable, and it's the soundtrack. Now, I like the battle theme. I like how it starts out light and almost comical, but as the fight goes on, it goes through these increasing phases of intensity. Until you get to the end and it's like, oh shit, I'm about to die. I like the town theme too. It's peaceful and pleasant. Makes you feel like nothing could go wrong in this town. And I really like the theme of Fairyland. Yeah, I've always been into this kind of thing. Melody of Love, Bridal Waltz, Make Me Feel Sad. Now that's an on-the-nose track title. There's so much great music in this game, so why do I consider the soundtrack a failure? Because in my 26 hours of playtime, around 20 of them were spent hearing the same few tracks over and over again. The battle, world map, town, castle, and dungeon themes. In my notes I said that I was getting tired of the battle theme around the 6-hour mark. Boy, I had no idea the sheer monotony that was to come. You know what game handled its soundtrack really well? DQ4. Having different world map themes and even a different battle theme for Maya and Mina was a much needed dose of variety. Even DQ2 changed the world map theme once you completed your party. Here, you're stuck with the same theme throughout. Now, I realized a long time ago that some people aren't bothered or care as much about music in games as I do. Me? I listen to game music on the reg. It's very important to me. So I'm sad to say that I was utterly sick of listening to DQ5 after about 10 hours in. It desperately needed more variety. And it does deserve some credit because on the few occasions when it does play the lesser used music, those moments become a lot more special, like with the final boss theme. Speaking of, one final note on the soundtrack here, there are some shockingly bad or confused tracks, like the little theme that plays for the fairy's horn. When I first heard this, I was like, what? This doesn't sound fairy-like at all. Sounds more dark than anything. Like that part in the ending theme of DQ4 that sounds like the world is ending. That always confused me. The Netherworld theme. I think Sugiyama might have been drunk for this. What an aimless, bizarre, annoying interpretation of a Netherworld. And I think the final boss theme is a dud too. It lacks any sort of intensity or urgency. It sounds more like what should be playing when the boss is like slowly looming over a town or something. I didn't feel like I was fighting for my life at all, which I guess deserves credit since I was just executing the same old boss tactics I mentioned earlier. Seriously, you could probably beat most of these boss fights using a macro. Between mindless mashing through too many battles, a tedious recruitment system, and a repetitive soundtrack, I'm sorry to say, but I found this particular Dragon Quest to be mostly boring. And that's coming from a guy that has played these kinds of turn-based RPGs his whole life. Trust me, I'm in my element here. And of course, that's not to say I dislike it entirely, absolutely not. I like the story, the characters, and the whole marriage aspect. The handling of Pankraz's death deserves a lot of praise, and the steady upgrades and transportation methods was pretty cool. You go from a boat to a magic carpet to the Zenith Dragon to a f***ing floating city. Final Fantasy, where you at? Oh, now that I think about it, I guess Final Fantasy VIII did that too. Now, you'd be forgiven for forgetting, considering it's, you know, FF8. The party chat adds a ton of character, and while I despise the ridiculous grind to get certain monsters in your party, there's no denying that building a group of classic DQ baddies is a fun mechanic. And I really like the opening hours. Stick me in a spooky, scary mansion with tricks and scares and silly skeletons, that's really all I need to be happy. But the greatest strength is, without a doubt, the story. That's probably why it had a movie made out of it. If it had maybe been condensed down a bit to shorten the game's length, I would have liked it a lot more. DQ5 has been called a masterpiece by many, and 30 years ago on the Super Famicom, I'm sure it was. But we live in an era where games like Persona have raised the bar for turn-based RPGs in just far too many ways for me to list here. I respect the hell out of what this game accomplished back in the day and how it changed the industry by inspiring Pokemon. But as far as playing it today goes, I just don't think it holds up as well as people say it does. I think it's a better game to remember than play. So when someday in the future comes and I remember getting married, having kids, and ending the game by dancing with my lovely wife, those will be some nice memories to have. And at that point, I'll be glad that I took the time to see Dragon Quest V through to the end. You've probably figured out by now, but this is not the first Dragon Quest I've covered. I would love if you checked out those videos too. And to the people that have been waiting for this video, I'm really sorry it took so long. I've been getting distracted by a lot of stuff, including a game that's going to be the subject for next time. I'll see you then. This is A Skeleton, signing out.